All right, welcome to the Thursday edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. You see the website address below. Don't click that. That's not a link, but that is that's the website name. All you have to do is type that into your search bar and you go to it, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. The most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You can find it all at Panther-Lair.com. And message boards where you can interact and talk about everything going on in the world of Pitt sports, football, basketball, and recruiting. The message boards were lively last night as Pitt took on Louisville on the road. There was a lot to talk about. Fans were talking a lot, and of course, that's our main topic here today on the Morning Pitt. It's our daily kind of rundown of whatever's going on in the world of Pitt sports, football, basketball, recruiting, whatever it is. We talk about it here on the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So like this video and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll never miss any of our exclusive Pitt video content. A daily Morning Pitt video, live Panther-Lair show like we did last night after the Pitt Louisville game. We do other post-game shows. We do a post-game show after every football game. After every Pitt football game, I should say, and then after sort of select Pitt basketball games that happen to overlap with our live Panther-Lair show that we do every Wednesday night. It was a lot of fun going live for the post-game show last night. Hopefully you can check in the next time we do a live post-game show. But good win for Pitt last night at Louisville. Look, Louisville's not very good. They won 2 games all year. They were winless in ACC play coming into last night. And I think there's always sort of this lingering fear that you're going to run into, that you're going to be the team that blows it against them. Even though they've been very bad and they haven't won many games, you're going to be the team that they get off the schneid against, right? I mean, there's always that concern. You could call it the Georgia Tech syndrome because that's what happened with Georgia Tech in football last fall. You didn't want to be that team, the team that gets beat by the team that hasn't beaten anybody, the team that gets beat by the team that looks really bad and that you should beat up on pretty good. You don't want to be that team. You don't want to be that footnote in history. And, I think Pitt fans, maybe not necessarily more than fans of other schools, but they've certainly got this propensity, have a fear of being that other team. Well, we can blow it against anybody, I think is a common Pitt fan refrain. Probably, the simpler among us would call it pitting, right? I mean, that's the nonsense we always hear about, even though it's ridiculous. I'm not even going to get into it. But that isn't what happened last night. And the final score ends up being a 21-point victory, Pitt's largest margin of victory in an ACC road game since joining the conference 9 years ago. Right? In their 10th season in the conference, they just recorded their largest margin of victory in an ACC road game. Prior to this, they had won 4 times on the road in an ACC game by double digits. Most recently, the Georgia Tech game on Saturday when they won by 11. Their biggest margin of victory in an ACC road game was in 2016 when they won by 14 points at Syracuse in February of 2016. They beat that last night when they beat Louisville by 21. And while the game was closer, it was 14-10 Louisville early in the game. Louisville flirted with single digit, cutting Pitt's lead to single digits. They went to halftime, and it was a 9-point game, and that was really just because Greg Elliott hit a jump shot with about 1 second to go. After 18 seconds to play, it was a 7-point game, and Louisville was able to get it back down into single digits in the second half as well. I think with about 10 minutes to go, it was a 54-45 game. But despite all that, I never thought this game. I don't want to say that I never thought this game was in doubt or in question, because any game can go the wrong way. It can always happen. But I sort of felt like Pitt controlled this game pretty much from the start and never really let it get away. Even as Louisville would make it close, I never sensed that Pitt was letting the game slip away. And probably the biggest reason for that is one Jamarius Burton. Jamarius Burton last night scored 10 points, but had one of his, I don't want to say one of his better games as a Pitt Panther, but I think one of his more impressive overall games. And I think there is a difference there. He didn't, score 30 points or 25 points or something like that. We've seen him score more in games. We've seen him hit more shots. He only made 5 baskets last night. We've seen him better on the glass. He only had 2 rebounds. We've seen him put up bigger numbers than we saw last night. Not assists. He set a career high in assists, and that's something we're going to talk about. We've seen him put up bigger numbers in his career at Pitt, but I don't know if we've seen him be in control of a game the way he was last night. 10 points and 11 rebounds, a double-double for Jamarius Burton, career high in assists, and he was just always in charge. And he started, he started driving in the second half. He wasn't really asserting himself. He was making passes, and when he started asserting himself and Louisville responded, he dished to Greg Elliott for a three. He just was playing really, really well. And I think it was largely because of how Burton was playing that I never really felt like this game was going to get away. Blake Hinson wasn't hitting anything. Nelly Cummings wasn't hitting anything. Those two guys finished 3 of 19 from the floor. But Burton was playing so well and setting up Greg Elliott, and Nike Sabandi was getting involved, that it never really felt like trouble. A lot of times in games, if you have Nelly Cummings not hitting baskets, and this was sort of the case against Georgia Tech, I think in the first half last week, or on Saturday, excuse me, he kind of broke out in the second half. But if you have Cummings and Hinson both struggling, and Hinson sat out a lot of time with 2 fouls in the first half, Cummings just wasn't really hitting anything. He only made 1 basket in the game. But when you have Jamarius Burton playing the way he did last night, and the way he has for the most part this season, it really keeps you in the games. And someone else, it might have been our friend Chris Carter from the Post-Gazette who made this point, and I think it's a great point. It's something I've thought a lot about this season. And certainly it was the case last night when you see, Hinson and Cummings don't do much. They only make 3 baskets between the two of them. Greg Elliott scores 23 points, goes 9 of 12 from the floor and 5 of 8 from 3. This team has enough weapons that if one guy is not hitting, another one can get you. If the Thunder doesn't get you, the Lightning will. You know what I mean? If the left hand doesn't get you, the right will. They have that kind of arsenal on this team that with Burton, Elliott, Cummings, Hinson, Sabandi. And to be quite honest, you probably wouldn't have included Elliott in that group a week ago or 2 weeks ago because he wasn't hitting a lot of his shots. You would have said, well, it's just Burton and Cummings and Hinson. And then all of a sudden Sabandi emerges. And then all of a sudden, and now Elliott has a big game. Nate Santos made a couple of nice baskets. They can come in waves. And when a couple guys aren't hitting, a couple other guys will. And I think you can almost sort of rely on it. Now, Jamarius Burton is Mr. Reliable. I mean, he is the consistent force out there who's always sort of a threat to take over a game and to make shots and set up his teammates, as we saw last night. But they're able to roll through guys. And so, Nike Sabandi comes in the first half when Hinson's not hitting. He's out with foul trouble. Cummings isn't hitting. And Nike Sabandi comes in and makes 4 3-pointers in the first half. And just drags them out. They were down 14-10. And then Sabandi, makes 2 threes in a row. Louisville gets a basket. Then Guillermo Diaz-Graham makes a 3. And Sabandi makes another one after that. And all of a sudden it's a 6-point game. Then Nate Santos makes a 3. And it's a 13-0 run. And they're up by 9. And it just sort of steamrolls from there. They can get you in a lot of ways. Not necessarily down low. They didn't get a lot in the paint, although they finished with 20 points in the paint with some of the drives and actually some pick and rolls, which I thought was really impressive to see. A few legitimate pick and rolls being run with Federico and with Guillermo Diaz-Graham. But they just have so many outside weapons and so many shooters and so many guys who can do what we saw Jamarius Burton and Nike Sabandi Sabandi too, but Greg Elliott did a lot of last night, which is, shot fake from outside the arc, take a few steps inside, dribble a couple times inside, and pull up and drain a jump shot. Jamarius Burton can do that. Nike Sabandi can do that. Greg Elliott can do that. Nelly Cummings can do that. Although he's getting defended in different ways nowadays, and it's getting more challenging for him to pull off some of those moves. They've just got a lot of weapons. And they beat the worst team in the ACC. They beat one of the worst teams in college basketball. But there was a time when games like that weren't a gimme. There was a time when and not too distant past, there were times when this team didn't take care of business against those kinds of opponents. But they sure did last night. And I thought they did it even more impressively than they did on Saturday when they beat Georgia Tech on the road. And they beat them by 11. That game against Georgia Tech, they had a scoring drought. They allowed Georgia Tech to have a chance. Georgia Tech couldn't capitalize, but they allowed Georgia Tech to have a chance with a scoring drought of, or a field goal drought of almost 6 minutes. They didn't have that last night. They just kept the pressure on, never let Louisville really get much confidence, and ended up only getting out rebounded by 1. How about that? 34-33 was the final rebound. The final rebounding numbers. Pitt only had 7 offensive rebounds, only got 1 second chance point, whereas Louisville had 11 offensive rebounds and 15 second chance points. But it was, it was impressive not because Louisville is good, but it was impressive because of the way that Pitt more or less controlled the game with, its leader leading the charge. This is Jamarius Burton's team, and he showed that again last night. Last night he sort of reasserted it, or he asserted that in a bit of a different way than he has in other games, but he played a heck of a game. I tell you, I'm getting more and more intrigued by Guillermo Diaz-Graham. Federico as well. He finished with 8 points. Federico had a lot of points kind of late in the game. Only had 3, I guess, late in the game, or 4 late in the game, something like that. But both of those guys. Federico had he had 8 points and 3 rebounds. Jeez. Guillermo had 6 points and 8 rebounds. I like how Guillermo's playing. I like how they're both playing. I think they're both developing as the season goes on. But I feel like Guillermo, with his energy, how he really gets after it, I think he's more aggressive than Federico. I don't know who's stronger between the two. I'd like to see an over-the-top style, arm wrestling match. See which one turns his hat around backwards and gets over the top and wins that. But I strength aside, he's more aggressive than Federico. I think he's more active than Federico, and he's willing to really kind of stick his nose in there. I mean, we've seen Federico show a little bit of attitude and show a little bit of aggressiveness, but I feel like Guillermo is sort of enjoying more and more of the matchups that he's getting in the ACC, and he's not winning all of them, and they're obviously very challenging for him, and he's finding that out. He's finding out it's tough to play in the ACC, but he seems to be feeding off of the challenge of it, and gets. I think it's created a sense of urgency for him that when the ball's on the floor, he's going after it. Which a 7-foot guy diving to the floor, that takes a little bit of courage. I think that takes a little bit of extra oomph, I guess, and some extra motivation to go after it like that. It's a lot different for Nelly Cummings to dive after a ball on the floor than it is for Guillermo Diaz-Graham to dive after a ball on the floor. But he's been doing it, and he's been getting after it, and he gets foul calls, and he takes fouls, and he likes to argue about it. But there's something about his approach and his mindset and his mentality on the court. It's been fun to watch, whether it's either end of the court, whether it's offense or defense, when he's going after the glass, when he's trying to score, the sort of audaciousness to take some of those threes that he takes, and he made one last night. He seems to really enjoy it, and it doesn't always go well. He gets beat a lot, you know what I mean, and he's going to get beat a lot, and he seems to have accepted that. He seems to have kind of come to understand that he's not taking it too personally, or he's not taking it too much to heart, and it's just kind of motivating him to work even harder and get after it even more. But it's been fun to watch. I think game after game you're seeing development, and he might not be where he needs to be by the end of the season, but he's going to be closer than he is right now. And like I say, it's been pretty fun. Not as much fun to watch Blake Hinson. Hinson finished in this game with, 8 points, 2 of 11 from the floor. Not really making many shots at all right now in this game. He was 2 of 11 from the floor, 2 of 7 from 3. Really didn't hit those threes until late in the game. And then added a few free throws, and this has sort of been ongoing with Hinson The last few games, I'm bringing up his game-by-game stats. The Georgia Tech game, he was 4 of 14 from the floor, 2 of 7 from 3, ended up with 13 points. He scored 10 in the loss at Duke, shot 3 of 8 from the floor. He scored 14 against Clemson, 4 of 11. Got a little closer to 50% from the floor against Virginia, 6 of 13. He's a volume shooter, and I think he's probably going to continue to take a lot of shots. That's sort of part of his game, but they haven't necessarily been falling lately for Hinson the way that they were maybe early in the season. Now, I think it's a slump that he can work himself out of. I think his teammates certainly have confidence in him, just like they've continued to pass the ball to Greg Elliott when he's been in a slump, and it obviously paid off last night. They're going to continue working the ball to Hinson. They're going to continue giving Hinson those shots and trying to get those shots for him because they've seen that he can make them inside the arc or outside the arc. And I think he'll continue to get his opportunities. And I would expect him to bounce back. I think he showed what kind of player he can be. I think with Hinson, Nelly Cummings, Greg Elliott to some extent, although it might be further along in this process with Elliott, just based on last night at least. But with Hinson and Cummings in particular, I think teams are getting a sense of how to defend them. And they're doing different things against them. And I think you saw the way they, Duke defended Nelly Cummings and all of Pitt's guards. But in particular, Nelly Cummings. And it was a challenging game for Cummings. I think Blake Hinson is being defended differently than he was early in the season now that they're sort of getting a book on him a little bit. And he's going to have to adjust his game. And Pitt's going to have to adjust the way they use him. And Jeff Capel's going to have to adjust the way they go to Hinson. And we'll see how that process goes because he's a big part of the, big piece of the puzzle here. They need him to get back into his scoring ways just to keep that, what we talked about earlier of, being able to just roll different scoring threats at you over and over again. That if this guy's not hitting, then this guy will. They need Hinson to be in that equation, not just be the guy who's not hitting all the time. So they need Hinson to get back on track. I don't think they're going to cut down his minutes or anything like that. He's not coming out of the starting lineup, and I don't think they're going to shy away from getting the ball to him. There are a lot of guys you want to get the ball to, and Blake Hinson continues to be one of them because I think he'll bounce back. I think he'll get back on track. Nike Sabandi, quiet in the second half last night, but huge in the first half. I keep calling him Spark Sabandi, and I'm going to keep working on this as my nickname for Nike Sabandi. It's going to keep happening. And even if it never catches on, I'm going to keep saying it. But I don't know how else you would describe it last night. He came into the game at the 16-minute mark and made a 3 less than a minute later. He came in around 16:11. He made a 3 at 15:22. And then he made, like I said, a bunch of threes to turn a 14-10 lead. A 14-10 Louisville lead into a Pitt lead. And so he only scored 12 points. Well, he scored 12 points, but they all were in the first half. Didn't score in the second half, but he was a big, big part of the reason why Pitt was in the position it was in. Heading into halftime and even, where they were in the second half. And the threat of Sabandi. And he was shooting in the second half. He wasn't making them, but he has become a legitimate threat that other teams are going to have to respect. And at some point, you'd like to think all these outside threats are going to translate into more opportunities inside for Federico and Guillermo Diaz-Graham. We'll see how that goes. They're going to continue to be a team dominated on the perimeter. It was funny, at a certain point during the game last night, Pitt was up like 13. This might have been in the first half. They had a 13-point lead. They were 31-18. And the TV announcers were saying, Pitt still really hasn't gotten anything out of near the basket or out of the post or in the paint. Well, no, but they're up by a dozen, so I think it's working. I was sort of surprised when they were talking last night about how Pitt, not necessarily a team that gets a lot of its points from three, and maybe that's what the numbers say, but they sure feel like a 3-point dominated team to me because they have Greg Elliott, Blake Hinson, Nelly Cummings, really Jamarius Burton and Nike Sabandi. You have 5 guys who are legitimate threats to shoot threes at any point, in addition to guys like Nate Santos or Guillermo Diaz-Graham or Jorge Diaz-Graham. So this is still a team that I think lives and dies by the three. Last night they were 14 of 34 from outside the arc, 41.2%, and like a dead even, like a dead heat between the first half and the second half, 7 of 17 in each half. Pretty impressive, and including making 7 in a row in the first half. I mean, it was a good game for Pitt overall, and they started slow. They had one basket, one made basket in the first, little less than 4 minutes of the game, first 3.5 or so minutes of the game. But even when this team starts slow, I think you feel like they can get back in it because of their shooting, because of their leadership, and quite frankly, because they have Jamarius Burton. I mean, he's playing at that high of a level right now. And like I say, I thought last night was one of his most impressive games. Let's see, what else do we have to say about Pitt basketball? Pitt's win last night. I mean, it was impressive. I think the way they controlled the game from start to finish, they never really let an inferior opponent, and that's what they were. They never let an inferior opponent get up on them. And now they're 13-6 overall. They're 6-2 in the ACC, which I was tracking their best starts in the conference. I should have had this. 2013. 2013-14 was their best start to ACC play since joining the conference. Their first year in the league. They started off 6-2 that year as well, and then they lost their 9th game to fall to 6-3. So Pitt's got an opportunity on Saturday against Florida State, a team they should beat. They have an opportunity to log their best start to ACC play since joining the league in 2013. They just got their biggest, largest margin of victory in an ACC road game, and now they have a chance to record their best start to league play. A lot of things going right for this team right now. A lot of things going right. We'll see if they can keep it up. I think they will. I think they should. We'll see what they do on Saturday. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Remember, if you click that subscribe button and turn on the notifications, you get an alert sent to your phone anytime we go live, anytime we post a new video, anything we do here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you do that and stay tuned because we'll have lots of Pitt video content coming to you all day. No, not all day, but every day we'll have something for you here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So Pitt wins by 21. And we talked about it last night on the postgame show. Talk about it again today. We appreciate you tuning in for it. Hope you've had a great week so far. We're almost to the end of it. It's Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday. It's what we all look forward to. So have a great Thursday. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning on the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.